Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Decloak podcast. And today my special guest is Keith Price, CISO of National Highways. Hello Keith, nice to meet you. How are you?
Hi Leo. Hi Leo. Thanks for having me. Doing well today.
Good. As I mentioned before we recorded, we've obviously seen or connected and crossed over on the world of LinkedIn, but it's good to actually get to speak to you in real life, virtually. And then we'll obviously get some of your insight and takes on the various topics that we have today. So, yeah, give me a brief overview of you and your career today.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. Well, combined 33 years in technology, security, kind of a mishmash. I was quite privileged in that the military sort of pushed me into the fields of IT and security. Was a munitions guy in the U.S. Air Force, but did IT most of the time because the IT folks was given the training and the rights to do networks and sysadmin, and I did some mainframe operations as well. And then from there, the military started putting more focus on what we called CompuSec, computer security in the day. And so I got a chance to get into some of the architecture and sort of a precursor to the CISO work, working alongside security folks. Did active duty Air Force mostly here in the UK, but I traveled around probably, I think, about 27 different countries in that time. And then retired, went back to the States, went to uni full time as a 38-year-old. So that was interesting. The U.S. military is quite good, takes care of their veterans quite well. And, they paid for 2 degrees. So I wish I'd done an MBA or a psychology or some other kind of degree for my master's, to sort of broaden out my skill set and knowledge, but it is what it is. And now I tell folks, learn from my experience. But then I did 5 years with the U.S. Army as a GS over in Germany in Stuttgart. And then the last 8 years has been in private sector. So from dark matter in the Middle East to Deloitte here in North-South Europe, a brief stint at Little Fish, and then 3 years as a contractor in the pharmaceuticals as a head of InfoSec, and now Chief Security Officer at Highways the last 7 months. And I've been waiting for this job for about 10 years because it gives me not just the cyber focus, but responsibility and leadership for all things security and probably resilience and those types of words in the near future.
I love it. I think it's a very varied career. And I would say in your 33 years, what should be your best role and what's been your worst role?
Oh, wow. So far, the best role is this one with Highways. Again, because I've got a great team. My history has been been dropped in and fix broken units and broken teams. So to come into Highways, and my predecessor Philomena, she built an amazing cyber team over the 3 years. So to come in, again, very privileged to come in and have a very mature, large, I think we're at about 100 something people in cyber, team that is taking care of business, which has allowed me to come in and then again concentrate on the other aspects of security. The worst experience, oh man, I would say it was probably the U.S. Army, and the reason being is I was working as a director for network operations on like an interim basis. They brought me over there as working with customer support and information assurance. And then our boss left. And so I stepped into this role, and we were a sort of a service provider model for U.S. Africa Command. And we had all these challenges. We were losing people to other units that were paying more within Germany. The ticket count was climbing, and we just had all these stresses and mental health issues. And it was sort of like 1 or 2 years in the making. And it just, finally I realized that I had to fail to succeed. And basically what I did was I just got all the team together. And I says, okay, look, we're not going to do 10, 12-hour shifts anymore. We're not going to kill ourselves to clear the ticket backlog because it's not happening. So let's just do an honest day's work, and I'll deal with the fallout, from all the tickets building and building and building. And that's what happened. And eventually they solved the issue because enough customers got angry, enough of the right customers at the right VIP level complain to where they got it fixed. But in the end, I demoted myself to take a job back here in the UK, back in, security focused at RAF Molesworth. So yeah, I would say those 2 years in Stuttgart was probably probably the worst example of a place that it was just really tough on everybody's mental health. And that's why, I mean, I've dealt with mental health issues. It's something I like to talk about a lot. And so it's an example that I use when I'm talking to people and delivering talks at conferences is, you can have this amazing high performance team and, all the best tools and technology that money can buy, but everybody's mental health is in the gutter. It just, it totally devastates the team.
Absolutely. It's almost like an invisible adversary or an
Yeah.
invisible threat. And I don't think people spend enough time and focus on mental health. I mean, you could have, a high performing team, you could smashing out 100 tickets a day or whatever it may be. But again, if people aren't being looked after or they have a leader within their team or group that has that resilience, that sometimes I think people play a role sometimes to protect their teams and they forget about themselves, and that weight just keeps building. And then obviously that impacts you as a leader, and then it has a knock-on effect. And I'm glad that obviously you're being forthcoming in terms of these items. And again, feel free to talk about more examples. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things I learned from that experience in Stuttgart was just that. I was protecting the team, trying to put a silver lining to every cloud. And I found in the feedback I got, and I get it today too, is, sometimes the people just want to see when their leaders are having a tough time. And they want their leaders to come to them as well so they can share the tough times together so that they know that you're not some infallible superhero god, because that's not the reality. They just want to know that you're a person too dealing with challenging issues. It's also a balancing act. I was in another organization where um, I went too far the other way. I was complaining about all the terrible things that were happening to me and my team all the time, and the flip side. We're making the situation worse, and eventually I got fired. And a lot of the reason was because I couldn't adapt to the constraints. Yeah, the constraints were bullshit, but at the same time, sometimes as a leader, you got to go, okay, I'm not going to win 10 battles, and I may not even win the war, but sometimes you have to suck it up. You have to understand that sometimes there's political machinations and there's things that you just have to adapt become to be seen as a good stakeholder and an influencer, because other people, your peers and others across the organization, probably suffering from the same types of things.
It's almost like that, like you create this black hole, and anything that crosses it gets sucked in, and then you actually become a victim of highlighting something that's so obvious in an organization that maybe that leadership or connecting pieces don't want to deal with. And they
Yeah.
certainly don't want it being reflected back on them or relayed back to them. So it's this. I think it's something everyone needs to navigate. You mentioned the political aspects of it. I think the CISO role is becoming more like a politician. I'm like minus the lobbying, of course, but it's like how do you kind of find these balances? And I'm interested, given your military background and an extensive career, do you have any advice on how you would navigate those types of negativities or these types of behaviors that may kind of, let's just say, trap you in a situation? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a technical guy, and the biggest problem I had was removing my technical brain from, um, or not removing it, but sort of placing it to the side when it came to effective leadership. So we look at the vast majority of really effective CISOs come from business. They're MBAs, they're accountants and statisticians and HR type people and stuff. And a lot of technical CISOs, they get all flustered, and we're kind of prima donna-ish in that we feel, oh, you don't have enough technical experience to. But you know what? And I think I saw it on a post recently, somebody complaining about MBA CISOs, and you have to be technical. And I says, well, actually, if they're influencing the executives and the board enough to get a budget to hire those technical subject matter experts to be on their team, then they're actually more effective than we are as technical CISOs. Because we've had to go out and hire BISOs to understand the business, because and I went, like I said, I wish I'd done an MBA. Well, I did a mini MBA, and that allowed me to understand terms like EBITDA and ROI and things like that, and to basically then go and also have that little accreditation where executives who are business leaders come and say, hey, we've got a security guy here who's done some business stuff. He highlights business achievements and things. It's less about the security. And so if you could do that, if you can get in there and really make yourself be seen as a business leader first and a security leader second. I don't even like to use the word security when I go and brief other leaders. I'll use terms like resilience. I'll use, and then the business continuity world, things like that. And it's about, again, proactive quality. So Greg Vandergast, uses quality to ensure security. Others use safety, and I like to use safety, and I'm integrating my security teams into the safety teams at highways, because I see there's other ways to influence the business into achieving the ultimate goal of implementing security, but it runs under the hood. It's not the primary focus of existing. It's something that should just be there doing its thing, and enabling the employees in the business to get on with taking care of business.
Yeah, I love that. It's absolute gold dust. That advice is you're almost rebranding the speaker language that people understand. You mentioned MBA, business talk, EBITDA. These are things that are very relevant to people who are running an organization, who probably get thousands of emails, multiple personal assistants, executive assistants, whatever it may be, helping them. You mentioned Greg. I know Greg as well, and hopefully he's a guest on the podcast later on this year.
Yeah.
And everything is about trust. It's about the psychological safety. Because if you go in and start talking about denial of service attacks, and people are going to be like, what is this? I'm struggling with like updating on the new iOS. So it's like, it's finding that balance where you don't alienate people, and I think that's where security leaders have probably struggled in the past and been locked out of the, I think it's the meme of the CISO table with all the children.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's still kind of a thing. And, I've been in organizations where the engineering side was like 95% of the job. And you could speak to 9 out of 10 people on the exec committee or board, and they understood what you spoke about. And I've went to organizations where cybersecurity wasn't even a thing. So when you're talking about being attacked, they're like, why would anybody want to attack us? And you're like, how could you make that relevant to them? So it's like, oh, imagine if someone stole your bank details. Oh, right, okay. So that's kind of like what would happen and work. And, you kind of need to really simplify it and speak a language where they understand. Then you have the business impacts. Business resilience you've spoken about is like, if we cannot operate as a company, we do not take revenue. That impacts, I don't know, SEC filings. It can impact multiple different things. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not earning revenue at highways. We don't earn revenue. I'm not yet. I plan on it, and it's something that's, I think, taken folks by surprise. My plan to do that, but we still have responsibility to the taxpayer. We still have responsibility to the travelers on our road network. And so it's about delivering. We're still delivering a service. Highways started out building highways. Then they were, delivery partner. And now in the future, they're going to be a service partner, service delivery. And it's all based around customer, right? And so, again, even in, public sector places where you don't have a bottom line, there's still a business exists, business justifications. You still submit business plans, business continuity plans. The word business is still there, even though you're not earning revenue and there's no bottom line as such. So yeah, I think again, technical CISOs. Um, I think if we get better at parking our egos a little bit, and and really saying, how can I assist? The first thing I do in an organization is I go in and I say, what can I do to help you? I don't care about security. So HR, oh, I gotta review 400 job descriptions. Sure, throw half of those over to me and my team will review them for you. What? Why would you do that? Well, because as we're doing this, I'm working with your team. I'm understanding the challenges that you encounter. And oh, Gus, guess what? Now I found out that joiners, movers, leavers process sucks. And my team can do something to help fix that, right? So it's about like sort of 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
You may get the answer 6 degrees later, but it's about building that trust. It's about building a no blame culture at work. So if you use phishing tests, use the phishing simulations to test your security team's ability to prepare the employees, not the other way around, right? And so, an example, we had a finance person was being groomed by a scammer over 8 weeks to say, "We need you to change the bank details on this invoice." Da 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 da. And this finance person says, "You know what? Something ain't right." And they reported it to the SOC. The SOC investigated. Guess what? Scammer, 1.8 million saved. But
wow.
that person could have sent if they just would have gone, yeah, okay, and it's my job and I got to say, but instead they thought about it, right? And that's what we're trying to instill. You shouldn't count on your employees to be the first line of defense, right? And I think this whole user is the weakest link mentality is really a terrible one. And it's something we're shifting away from in security. But again, it's for us to prepare them. And to do that, you have to do it with a grassroots effort. Make them aware of what's secure at home with their teenagers and their parents and grandparents, and then they'll bring that into work.
Absolutely, it's about making it relatable. And as you said, you're doing something quite left field where you're helping other teams siphon through their work and helping basically a discovery mission of these processes in the background. And again, it goes a long way. Ultimately, we're helping other teams, which is excellent. So
Yeah.
probably we'll jump on to the challenges that you've faced in the industry. So they could be personal or professional, and kind of talk me through. Give me 3 challenges that you've faced yet.
Well, the first one, as I spoke earlier, was around mental health. I've actually considered it myself recently of going back into just IT, a CIO role. And I know there's a lot of CISOs doing that, looking at going back to just, if I got to deal with a P1, it's because, there's an outage on the network or a VPN is gone, something's gone down versus a business destroying thing, right? And, you know, prior to highways, I always had my phone. I was always checking alerts. I had this alert fatigue, goes on all the time, but I get a buzz at 2 in the morning. I'm up, I'm checking it. Now at highways, we've got all these things in place. They're more respectful of, your personal time and things like that. So I'm starting to wean myself off of that. But it really has a big impact on your mental health. And SOC analysts, we look at the folks that are like that, defense, they're there, something, one wrong decision in their minds could, totally ruin things and, allow an attack. But we have to really concentrate on, helping folks out, giving them a work environment where they're able to confidently take care of business, right? To where they're not having to worry about other things, right? So, an example, and I love Andy Ellis's book called 1% Leadership. So he's an ex-Air Force guy like me. He's a security leader, and he's written a book called 1%. And basically what he does is he says there's these 52 things you can do, one a week or whatever, and they help improve the efficiency. They help improve the mental health. And one of them is, if your people are sick or they go on holiday, well, the day they come back to work, make them untouchable for that day so they can clean out their inbox and they can read stuff and catch up. And so, implement those kind of things. And it's really about helping the mental health. And then the second challenge is around hiring, right? There's a big discussion around, you got to have certifications. Do you have to have a degree? Do you have to have this? And what's entry? There's no entry level jobs in cyber. That's bullshit. I hire for entry level all the time. In fact, I hire entry level with little to no experience. And then what we do is we train them up into what we need them to do, right? So I hear people say, oh, I've been hiring for this position for over 12 months. Well, why didn't you hire somebody good 12 months ago and then use that 12 months to develop them into what you want them to be, right? I hire part-time roles. I've got teachers. I'm looking at psychologists and solicitors and lorry drivers and people who are coming from other vast, diverse backgrounds, right? So when we talk about diverse teams, it includes all these other aspects of life that we don't often look at. So hire a good person and then develop them into what your team needs. And man, it really works, and you're getting people from programs like Caps Lock, which I've worked with
Yeah.
before. And it's not just about uni cyber graduates, it's about people who decide not to do uni as a career path. So the hiring aspect is probably the second challenge, and one that we're doing pretty well in highways. But elsewhere you see conflicting information. And then I would say the third challenge again is getting rid of that techno speak at the stakeholder level, at the executive level, and the board level, right? Like you mentioned earlier, you go in, we got 72,000 vulnerabilities. We had 6,200 alerts. And what does that mean to those people? They hear it and they're like, oh, Jesus, that's terrible. Is it terrible? I don't know. You tell me, right? So you have to be able to tell a story, right? We hear this a lot. Tell a story about what your security team is actually accomplishing, what they're trying to address, what are the problems they're trying to solve, what are the crown jewels of the business that we're protecting. Do we have confidence that we have visibility of all our assets, right? And assets aren't just computer systems, right? Assets can include data, assets can include processes, all these kind of things, right? So prove to those leaders that you're confident, but also be honest with them and say, not using FUD, but say, should the worst happen, I'm confident because we tabletop exercise and we war game and we practice, not just within cyber, but with other stakeholders in the business and then outside into our supply chain. And you show evidence that you're practicing for when the worst happens, it instills them with a level of confidence that they're like, okay, something bad could happen, but we know that Keith and his team and others across the business will jump in, just like the Starship Enterprise, and take control of the situation and negotiate and make decisions and tell people to go do. And those people already know that they got to do, so they've been doing it. And you build that muscle memory. And so it's all about resilience and preparing for when the worst happens.
I love that. The thing that really struck a chord there was the hiring aspect you spoke about. And I don't know if you blog, please blog this, because there is such a stigma around using entities like Caps Lock, or hiring, entry level positions, because I think there's a fear where we don't have time to train people. Things happen a million miles an hour. Again, as a leader, you need to control or help build those controls where that stability is there, so you can allow for people to grow. Because what you'll find is through that entry level, they'll probably have more heart and soul and determination to really make a go of it. And for me, that's a fundamental thing. And also, you mentioned the jargon aspect of it. Something we introduced recently was like an FAQ and a complete alphabet and index of all the like acronyms like CNAP, CSPN, whatever it may be. And that's really helped people understand what we're talking about. Like even explaining what vulnerability management is, why do you need to update a system, and talk about and showing people those kind of threat outlays of, if you don't do this, the person can come in here and here's the pathway of where they'll attack, and then kind of highlighting those dangers. But please,
show and tell is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
So I'll bring in my team and they'll show a privilege escalation attack live. They'll do it themselves, and the audience doesn't care about the technology or the scripting that they're doing or anything, but it's the end result is they show, I now have access to this, or I now have access, or now I can influence these types of things. And back to the hiring thing, the market dictates the candidates, right? And what I mean by that is, so life is hard across the world, right? Financially, families are struggling.
Yeah.
And so what you have to understand is that a lot of primarily women have left the full-time workforce to come home and look after the kids because childcare is way too expensive and salaries are not meeting it. So in
Yeah.
these part-time roles, we're looking at them as a demographic, disabled, neurodiverse, people who can't afford to work full time, but still want to maybe continue in security or come into security, but they also should expect to be compensated fairly.
Yeah.
So it's a good combination of you can work from where and whenever you want. It's 20 hours a week. You're going to be doing some interesting work. You're going to be researching, doing white papers, doing um, culture and awareness presentations and things like that. But it's to meet a need that society currently has, which is giving families an extra income source to help alleviate financial pressures.
Amazing. And again, add that to the blog. I'm like forcing this blog on you, Keith, and you're probably like, fuck off. You're probably too
Yeah,
busy. But
my friend Amy Stokes Waters, she's going to
yeah,
get
yeah, Amy. Yeah.
because I always give her shit about her blogs. I'm like, blogs are so 2000s. Nobody. She's like, oh, look, people love them, and I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I will.
There's been moments in the podcast, like my co-producer James, he's going to add in some animation and some things, and we're gonna have a right good laugh with this, and maybe an image of Amy, just like I told you so,
Yeah,
So, but yeah, I mean, it's almost like I'm kind of begging for this information because I think it is so valuable to put that out there, and hopefully within the community people can start to promote that, and maybe people can learn from it and take a punt. I remember I hired someone from a non-traditional security background. She was an air hostess by trade. Then she got involved in physical security audits and then, project management. And I think maybe we'd probably overlooked her CV. And then something, I don't know, just had a feeling. I looked in it. I knew within about 7 minutes of the interview, I was just like, holy shit. I'm like
yeah.
punching myself for not taking that opportunity in a person. And I never looked back, so shout out to Laura, you know where you are. So yeah. So we'll probably move on to a topic then, Keith, that you would want to discuss that needs relevance and clearing up in the industry. I think we probably may have covered that throughout the kind of pod, but if there's anything very
Yeah.
specific, like I know recently we discussed things like pen testing, we had crypto, we've had AI, anything. Yeah, I mean, listen, it could be TV shows that mirror cyber. It could be, yeah, I mean, shit, it could be anything. Up to you.
No, I would say the one thing we're not good at all is developing our leaders of the future, right? So again, this comes back to I think more the technical side of the industry, not so much the business side, who are better at it than we are. So on the technical side, a lot of us sort of wanted to be chief architects or chief engineers and da da da. We never really wanted to lead teams or supervise people, and so that's kind of we fell into, or, we may have fallen into a CISO role, and then because it's a new thing and nobody really knew what a good CISO looked like, we kind of got away with a bunch of shit because we were just sort of designing it and faking it till we made it, as we went along. Now, though, there's an expectation, and it's not happening, in that we develop our replacements, right? So we don't, we'll see someone was blasting, somebody was hiring a deputy CISO. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Oh, but, you got to bring somebody up to replace you. You got to have somebody, you got to have a succession plan.
Yeah.
You got to have somebody that wants to do it. First of all, that's the biggest challenge is on the technical side, probably 80% of people on the tech side don't want that leadership responsibility. They just want to be the best architect, engineer, developer, whatever. And so if somebody shows that interest or promise early on, we need to do better in getting them developed. And again, developed in the non-technical stuff, the business stuff, the stakeholder management, the Game of Thrones shit, right? Bring them into meetings with you so they can see all the nefarious shit that you deal with as a leader and how you overcome it and how you we talk about influence, but sometimes it's straight up manipulation, which is it's a negative word, It
It's a
is effective.
psyop. It's like a psyop.
Yeah,
That's what it's like. Yeah.
but all other business leaders do it. It's not a, it's just part of life, right? And so what you have to do is, like I said, you can't use FUD. FUD will get you your first and maybe second budget in cyber. After that, the executive go, come on, we're tired.
Yeah. It's you're switching to an OnlyFans account.
Yeah, the world hasn't ended, Keith. Chicken Little. Stop running around screaming the sky's falling all the time. So again, it's about we're not good at developing the newer talent coming up. We're not
Yeah.
developing the leaders of the future. And again, it's part. This is part of we talk about the hiring practice and mental health. All these things you have to develop those leaders of the future in being able to recognize and not necessarily follow your plan because they may and probably will have better ideas, right? So again, there's a, a wealth of experience in younger generations that also I don't think we capitalize on very well as older, especially male leaders. We feel it's a sign of weakness to go to a 21-year-old and go, "What do you think about this problem? How would you challenge? How would you address this challenge?" But I found some of the most brilliant ideas I've heard come from those 21, 22-year-olds, right? So it's again getting past our egos, trying to put our biases aside, and really just going out and leveraging all that amazing talent and then developing it to
Yeah.
replace us one day.
I think that's quite interesting because these people that we bring in as part of the succession plan. So I was going to actually quote the Succession TV show, but I'll hold off. Maybe I'll add some animation in later. But the I think they're not caught up in the weeds as much as we would be. They're very fresh, probably have that naive view, which is quite good because they're not exposed to the political radiation. But is there any kind of what would your blueprint be? So you hire someone, or you basically find someone within your team or within your structure. Give me some advice around what you would do to then mentor them to get them ready.
Yeah, so the first thing I do is I put them in touch with other executives, so CFOs, COOs, CEOs, right? I find them some willing mentors in those spaces because that's kind of what I did by accident. I had another CISO tell me, how many CFOs do you know, and how many conferences do you attend that are CIO only? So you could be that big fish in a little pond and get out there. And like with my CFO mentor, he basically said, "Look, like on Reddit, explain it like I'm five, man. Explain it like we're idiots. Because when you come in and you start using all this jargon, so again, it's about connecting them with those other leaders so that they can start understanding what the pain points, but also the success points. What does right look like? What does good look like in that CFO's mind? I think we can make some assumptions, but there's danger in that too. So it's literally connecting them with those folks and getting them to understand the importance of building that professional network outside of security. In fact, now I'll be honest with you, I don't really like attending cyber events or cyber conferences because to me it's just like this big echo chamber. We're all saying the same things to each other, but we're not getting the input or the feedback from those other leaders because they're not there in the room. So again, if you're a aspiring security leader, as early as possible, start getting into the rooms with those other people across the business, but also in from your supply chain.
Yeah.
So get into the room with the people that you pay to deliver you a service, right? Because we talk about supply chain risk is the biggest risk of business. Okay, why? Right? Why is it that? Why is that the case? Open up those communication channels. So for me, that's sort of the blueprint. I don't know if it really exists with me yet. I still kind of make it up as I go, but it's all dependent on the individual too. So COVID was very damaging to young people's anxiety levels, and we're doing these for return to office mandates, and they're just sort of like they're being foisted upon 18 to 28-year-olds by guys like me who grew up in a physical office and da da da. And here they've had 3 years away from it without the experience, and we're just like culture shock. Get your ass back to the office and collaborate and blah. And they're like, I don't know what that means. How do I do that? And so again, as leaders, we have to be less dinosaur and more compassionate and empathetic towards our teams, and try and take, again, you're not going to please everybody all the time, but you should make an effort and be seen to caring about your people and the challenges that they are going to encounter because they're in a different generation that has different life experiences.
I think that's just bang on the money. Again, that kind of, when you were talking about a blueprint, getting people exposure,
Yeah.
because, obviously there is a younger generation, an exposure of, real world activity, speaking the same language as other people like CIO, CFOs, whatever it may be, that definitely helps. And it's almost like when you allow them to engage, it's like they're doing their own reconnaissance. They'll have their own mindset, their own opinion, because they will look at things completely different, and that's a good point about, us dinosaurs telling people to get back to the office or whatever it may be. And, they ironically will be the asteroid that kills us,
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the way I see it. But no, it's excellent, and it's definite sound advice. And so, to probably move on and conclude then, what's the one thing in cyber you think is bullshit and needs focus and needs to change?
Oh, geez, bullshit. I think so. Drew Simonis, I'm going to call him out. He's on LinkedIn, very active guy, senior leader. He's very good also at calling out. He's better at doing it in the right way than I am, because I'll just come out and be sarcastic and be an asshole about stuff. But he said, same thing with Alan Alford. They say things like, why do we care about how we pronounce CISO or CISO? Does anyone really give a fuck about, is it CISO or CISO? Why do we talk about certifications all the time? And why do we argue about gatekeeping? And we spend all this time on arguing about stuff, bullshit stuff. Again, I think the influencer thing is interesting. I, I see a lot of people who have risen up through the ranks and become influencers, and it's not that they're cyber experts. In fact, a lot of them have very little security experience, but they care about their fellow human, right? They show that they want to help people. And that's where they amass their following, is because they're genuine. And I won't throw any names out, but there are some people out there and they themselves have had a rough ride,
Yeah.
being made redundant and things like that. And yet they're always out there trying to help other people first. So to me, that's the kind of influencer that you want to follow, is the people that are out there that, even though their life is in the shitter, they're still out there having a positive mindset and trying to help other people. Then there's the other influencer who is like, I'm the best at everything, and I'm dead, and they're assholes. They just treat people like shit. So it actually doesn't matter how brilliant they may be, or how valuable their knowledge is. The fact that you're just a dick to people, to me, that like puts me off, right? And other people are like, well, I'd like to listen to you, but I got this problem in that you're kind of an asshole. So I think these are some of the bullshit issues that we're dealing with, and they're really minor, but we spend so much effort and give them so much oxygen that, again, with this new job, I've been on LinkedIn less, and I felt my own mental health has actually improved because I haven't seen all these bullshit arguments on LinkedIn and other social media sites. And so, it's like, we just got to park our egos.
I think totally, and some of the most humbling things that will happen in your life is, you'll lose a job or redundancy or some personal tragedy. And I think it's a tough one, where we are in terms of the, information is so readily available, whether it's good or bad. We're seeing the weaponization of social media, and that's one thing I like, whether it's a wake up on a Monday and I look at things and I'm on LinkedIn or whatever it may be, and I'll see someone like, oh, just close 10x deals, and I'm like, it's amazing, but where's the validation of that in your life? If through, for example, you're on a podcast or you're giving a talk or you're writing an article and someone becomes inspired by it, or maybe someone thinks differently towards it. That's what I think, everything should be. And there are people, I would say, that are probably coming through that are emerging that have never worked a day in cyber, and they have an opinion on it. Like, oh, I'll speak with 100X and they tell me this is what they're looking for to hire a CISO. And I'm like, but I mean, what you're talking about, you've got a collective information. It's three things. It's ISO, it's building a team and whatever it may be. And it's like, oh, but they'll never pay more than this. Or I've just spoke with a CISO who earns $500,000-$600,000. It's like, how do you kind of narrow in on that realism of, what people are saying is beneficial towards what people are saying is just a distraction? I think is something we'll probably have a conundrum around for many, many years. But that's why we need you back on LinkedIn, Keith. We need you fighting the good fight. And, I know you've been distracted with this new job, but it's like, cut this shit and get back on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I still lurk. It's just I'm less active on the postings, but I'll throw one more name out there before the end is Joe Head.
Yeah.
He's a guy that kind of straddles both worlds. He straddles the old grizzled leader, CISO type, and then the new, exciting, energetic security leaders coming up. And he's given them the good advice. He's given me great advice too in the past. And he's basically saying, like, yes, these things are important, but don't concentrate. Don't put, if you've only got so much energy in a day, only so many hours in a day, put more energy into these things, So, and he's just gone out on a new coaching business. And I also see other younger, even younger people who are, again, not necessarily cyber people, but because of their generation, they've grown up in a connected world. They have a view that's, again, unbiased. So they come in and they see things and they call things out. Gen Z and Gen Alpha folks, they put up with less bullshit than we do. Yeah. Like if they're mistreated or whatever, they're gone out the door. They just won't put up with it, and I applaud that. I wish I was that brave. I wish I was that strong-willed of a person. And I tell people, get 4 to 6 months worth of bill money in the bank so that if you're being mistreated at a toxic workplace, you can give them the finger, fuck off, and you got your bills covered, right? That's very important. I think Americans aren't great at preparing for the rainy day, whereas Europeans and the rest of the world are a little bit better from what I can see. So, again, it's a generational thing. And again, for us as the dinosaurs, it's for us to make it a welcoming environment and to, appreciate and recognize the contribution that the younger generations are making, again, not just in cyber, but in like life in general, right? Yeah. Professional and personal.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Joe. I think, it's interesting. I was like, obviously been on LinkedIn a long time and followed Joe. And I think for a guy who worked in recruitment, I don't think I saw him post a job for 18 months. And it's like, where does it lead? And obviously you mentioned the coaching thing. And, again, fair play if there's an appetite for people who want to be coached by someone who has spoken to CISOs, then, there'll obviously be a collage of information. But, I think be wary of false prophets. I think there's also other people, mostly in the US side, that, they proclaim they can get you trained at certain levels and they're not backed by anything. And, that can be quite worrisome as well when people maybe plow some money into it and they think they're being, I don't know, CISO certified, and they forget that you need multiple years of domain knowledge. You need to be able to obviously speak business language and galvanize and build teams and everything else. So it's but that's where the world is. There's multiple people who have a voice and they're out there doing their thing. Yeah. So yeah. So on that note then, Keith, we shall conclude. Again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see more of you from LinkedIn. And for anyone who continues to watch the channel, please subscribe, like, and all the other things you do when it comes to YouTube, because it greatly helps the channel. We are doing well, given we're a month old. So there'll be some various changes within the channel over the next coming months. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Leo.